Yogic methods for energy management. This is printed in linkedin.com/pulse/yogic methods energy management, Aaron Spivey. It's written by Aaron Spivey, lead generation and reputation marketing specialty test, semi-pro guitarist, and published December 13th, 2016. Many yoga teachers, specifically ones who are better educated, refer to yoga as an energy management system. If I may toot my own horn, hey, it's my blog, so why not? I'll go ahead and put myself in that category. Beyond the various acrobatic stunts and contortions that are associated with the practice of Hatha yoga, there's a wide variety of tools that can be used to modulate our energy. This is yoga as medicine. Teachers, take note. This article will help you sequence your classes to obtain the appropriate energetic effect for your students based on their needs and the time of day. There are 3 categories of Hatha yoga practices: Brahmana, Langana, and Samana, all accented on the first syllable. I'm going to be using these words a lot, so let's define them. Brahmana refers to practices that are more nourishing or activating, or yang. Brahmana is associated with the inhale. Asana and pranayama that expand the inhale, especially back bends, inversions, and standing postures, and with breath retention, holding at the top of the inhale. These practices tend to be more strengthening and activating to the sympathetic nervous system, the part of the CNS that allows us to get things done. Acute activation of which is called the fight or flight response. If you've studied Ayurveda, these practices are analogous to building foods, more akin to rice and lentils than a triple espresso. Langana comes from the root word lagu, meaning light, as opposed to guru, heavy. Light as in lightening your load, aka cleansing, grounding, and purifying. It can be thought of as the yin to the yang. Langana is associated with the exhale. Asana and pranayama that extend the exhale, especially forward bends, and with breath suspension, holding the breath out after the exhalation. These practices are more relaxing and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest. Samana translates to equal, and it's the root word for same. Samana practices balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic responses. One of the most common pranayamas is called samavriti, which is equalizing the length of the inhale and exhale. Asanas that are samana in nature are twists and lateral bends. Do both sides, of course. In general, there are two ways you can breathe when practicing yoga, or doing anything else for that matter. One is to breathe into the chest, and the other is to breathe into the belly. Breathing into the chest would be more energizing, Brahmana. Breathing into the belly is more relaxing, Longana. Classically, yoga practice is done with chest breathing, slightly engaging the transversus abdominis, TVA, to pull the belly in. You can learn this by placing one hand on the upper chest and one hand on the lower belly. Inhale into the chest, moving the upper hand. Exhale and pull the belly in towards the spine. Combine this with Ujjayi pranayama and maintain it in your asana practice, and you'll get more energy. Breathing into the belly is also known as three-part: belly, ribs, collarbones, or Durga breath. This makes sense because Durga is the earth goddess, and breathing this way allows us to feel more grounded. Unfortunately, many yoga teachers will teach this breath at the beginning of class and never teach chest breathing, which leads many students to breathe this way throughout their practice. You actually get more oxygen breathing into the chest. So if it's a vigorous practice, you generally want to breathe the way I described in the last paragraph. In brief, before we get into sequencing, I want to have one note of caution to don't make your inhales longer than your exhales, and don't make retention longer than exhale. This can put strain on the heart, and according to Krishnamacharya, should only be attempted by serious students under the supervision of an adept teacher. In the Sivananda tradition and perhaps others, there is a common 1-4-2 ratio for Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing. This is contraindicated by Krishnamacharya. Try a 1-2-2 ratio instead. For instance, inhale for 5, hold for 10, exhale through the other nostril for 10. When working with the breath in asanas, start with extending the exhale first. Once that's comfortable, match it with the inhale, and progressively move on to breath retention, then suspension. Another method is to equalize the 4 parts of the breath: inhale, retention, exhale, suspension. Start with a 6 count and work your way up. How do you decide which asanas and pranayamas to do or to include in your class? First of all, think about what time of day you're practicing or teaching. If it's early morning, you want to gradually build energy so that you and your students will have sustained energy throughout the day. So a morning practice for me will start out slow and meditative, and typically get into some strong standing postures. I tend to stay away from deep back bends in the morning unless I'm sequencing my practice to prepare for deep back bends. So I tend to be pretty stiff in the morning. Hey, Get your mind out of the gutter. Oops. It was in the article. We can think of asanas and pranayamas as lying on a spectrum from Langana to Brahmana, or yin to yang. Forward bends are the most Langana, while savasana would be the most Langana, really, whereas intense back bends and inversions are the most Brahmana. Side note, shoulder stand is actually more Brahmana than headstand because it takes more energy, at least for people who have been practicing for a while. Just thought you might like to know. Samana practices balance the energy, so sequence them to create an overall effect of Brahmana, Langana, or Samana as well. For a Brahmana sequence, you want to focus on the inhale, and then the retention holding at the top of the breath. Again, I want to emphasize that the inhale should not be longer than the exhale. A typical power yoga class is almost always going to be more on the Brahmana side. Lots of big movements, chaturangas, lunges, crow pose, wheel pose, etc. If you're someone who feels like you need more energy in your life, lunging back bends are just the thing. For an energizing pranayama after savasana, you might have students do a few rounds of Ujjayi pranayama with a 10-second inhale, 10-second retention, and 10-second exhale, followed by a few rounds with suspension, 2 seconds for beginners, 10 for intermediate advanced. There needs to be some sort of balance. You don't want to just rev your students up and send them off into the world with the 1-minute savasana. And if you do this at night, you surely go to yoga hell. Then again, you don't necessarily want to give them a 10-minute savasana if you're just starting their workday. What would be better is a 5-minute savasana, followed by 3 minutes of alternate nostril breathing. Or if it's in the evening, perhaps a progressive exhale extension pranayama. Example, in 6, X6, in 6, exit 6, in 6, exit 10, etc. And if you do teach a backbend heavy sequence, Anna Forrest teaches that the best way is to balance afterwards, is to either traction the spine in horse stance or to do some spinal twists before counterposing with forward bends. And if you really, really want to counterpose after doing lots of back bends, or your back will not be happy. Langana practice are most suited for the evening, and anytime you're feeling particularly wound up, which it seems most people are all the time. Honestly, if you live in a city, you're probably going to need a lot of Langana practice. As I said before, if someone is new to yoga, the best way to start working with the breath is to lengthen the exhales. A lot of people don't fully exhale habitually, so for these people, focusing on the exhale is going to be more important than doing back bends and inversions. Note that not that they can't do these things, it's just that the exhale should be the focus until they're able to breathe deep, full breaths with a complete exhale on a regular basis. If you're practicing in the evening or teaching an evening or especially late evening class, the focus should be on the exhale and perhaps incorporating breath suspension, holding out, and lots of forward bends. Toward the end of the day, the energy is naturally downward, so evening sequencing should be sort of a descendro, opposite of early morning. Start by building some heat, then transition into grounding and relaxing. Samana practices can really be done at any time, and it depends on how you feel. Twists and lateral bends are my personal favorite type of asana, even though I have the hardest time with them. Twists balance the nervous system like nothing else, aid digestion, and additionally allow us to access the stored emotions in our viscera. I honestly believe that twists are the most important type of asana and should be included in every class. People might do some forward bends at home and perhaps back bends every once in a while. But I don't think people, besides certain athletes, twist much out of yoga class. Side bends provide a lot of same benefits as twists and back bends, without being as stimulating as deep back bends, making them more appropriate for later evening practice. The idea of samana can be applied to a sequence that balances brahmana and langana, or to a class that focuses on twists and or side bends. This type of class is great for any time of day, although if you're doing a samana sequence in the late evening, it's probably best to transition into a lot of forward bends towards the end. Basically, tailor the sequence to your needs or the needs of your clients. Overall, you'll want there to be some aspect of samana in the practice, whether the intended effect is moving energy up or down. So we want our yoga practice to reflect the energy of the day. Unless we're working graveyard shifts, which I don't advise, we'll be bringing the energy up in the morning and down in the evening. And we want our asana and pranayama to reflect that overall. People aren't sleeping enough, and if we want to really help people as yoga teachers, we have to be sleep ambassadors. Seriously, you probably aren't getting enough sleep yourself. Not to say that we won't do a forward bending focus sequence in the AM or a backward bend class in the evening. No, probably shouldn't do at least intense back bends, say after 6 p.m. And if we do, it should be balanced with asana and pranayama that support the natural cycle of activity and rest. Some of you might work for studios where the classes don't necessarily do that, but hopefully you can tweak things to go in that direction or find another gig. If you get into Vinyasa yoga therapy, you'll see that if you are depressed, you want to start with langana and end with brahmana. Conversely, if you want to meditate, you'll go from brahmana to langana. This is classical yoga, going from asana to pranayama to bandhas to mudras to meditation. I'm not really sure how kriyas like Bhastrika, Kapalabhati, or Agnisari fit into this model. All three are definitely heating and stimulating, but they're also purifying, especially Kapalabhati and Agnisara. If anyone knows, please tell me. I asked to share this post with your yoga friends if you found it helpful. Feedback is appreciated, and he says please don't hesitate to let him know if he got something wrong, just like a really good teacher.